Well, the grooming gang row goes on. Today, the Home Secretary got up in the House of Commons and announced that the government will put £5 million into local inquiries with the backing of national government. They've also announced a national audit to be led by Baroness Louise Casey. But what was, I think, really interesting was in response to questions asked by members of Parliament, on 7 occasions, the Home Secretary was asked, will these be statutory inquiries? What do I mean by that? I mean having the ability to say to somebody in social services or somebody in police or somebody in local government, you must come along and give evidence. And the answer 7 times was no. So I'm beginning to think that what the government are really doing is just kicking the can down the road. We know the great British public, who frankly have been horrified to learn that in up to 50 different towns in this country, these mass rapes, gang rapes, have been happening. 73% in opinion polls say they want a national inquiry. The government isn't going to give us one. Now, as you know, I've said if there was to be no inquiry at all, I'd call one. And you almost think, in a way, they've done this to try and box me off a little bit, because I could call a national inquiry, but I wouldn't have statutory powers either. I think this is a classic political fudge. I don't believe myself this will actually solve anything. I hope I'm wrong, but give me your thoughts at home. Is this enough? Farage at GBNews.com or tweet #Farage. I'm joined in the studio by Alex Stafford, former Tory MP for Rother Valley, one of the areas very seriously affected by this problem. Also joined by Jane Stevenson, former Conservative Member of Parliament, and Dr. Krish Kandiah, campaigner and founder of Sanctuary Foundation. Good evening, everybody. Alex, we kind of knew. I mean, Rotherham was the first big town where the scale of abuse was uncovered and where not only was the country shocked, but the world was shocked. You know, I had people in Australia saying to me, my goodness me, what's happening in Rotherham? I mean, it reflected appallingly on the country. And there was a big report into Rotherham. There's been nothing since that report that actually has drilled down as much as to what happened in that town. But we are now learning that in at least 50 other towns, this scale of abuse did take place. What do you make of today's announcement?
Well, I think it's too little too late. And if I was one of the towns that didn't have an inquiry given to me, I'd say, what about my girls? What about my daughters, my wife?
What do you mean, don't they matter?
Yeah, don't they matter? Surely. This is Labour saying we're going to pick and choose some towns which matter and some towns that don't matter. And that is why we do need a grand inquiry, a national inquiry, to look at everyone, because everyone's daughters and girls do matter. And Labour saying, well, they don't. And what is worrying is, obviously, I represented part of Rotherham.
Yeah.
In this sort of 10 years, plus what happened, it's more than just what happened. It's the cover-ups as well and what actually happened. Because in Rotherham, in 2005, the councillors were told grooming was going on. When the Times started reporting it, the Rotherham, the Labour-run council said it was Murdoch lies. And some of those people, some of those councillors who went to the seminar in 2005 who said there's grooming going on and then later denied it was going on, were still councillors until 2024, Labour representatives in the area. And I wrote to Keir Starmer 6 times as an MP saying these people should not be councillors. And do you know how many times Keir Starmer in that time responded to me and cared about it? Not once. So this is Labour doing nothing. They're clearly not caring for our girls.
I mean, one of the reasons I joined the call for a national inquiry and said I'd try and raise the money and find some independent people to run it. Yeah, twofold, really. One, I don't think the victims have ever been listened to properly or even believed, frankly. That's one of the worst aspects of this. They simply weren't believed. But also the cover-up disturbs me almost as much as the crime. Not quite, but almost as much as the crime. And that's where that word statutory comes in. Because if, say it was just 5 to begin with, and she did say she could extend to more towns, but, you know, that's sort of hedging again. But unless you have statutory powers, the people that need to be brought in and cross-questioned by a good KC won't be, will they? Yeah,
and that's exactly right. There's been such a cover-up across the country. It has been a cover-up for decades. The only way to find out what actually happened, get answers, and also stop it happening again. And that's the really important thing. It's not just dealing with the victims, but also stopping future victims, is to truly say, we will come after you, the people who did the crime, but also who covered up and enabled the people who did the crime. And that is so important as well. So down the line, future girls are protected. Future girls are not raped. Because if the people know, we're going to come out for you, we're going to come after you if you're trying to cover it up, that will save lives and save people being raped.
There are thousands of men out there, thousands, who engaged in this, who have never felt the force of the law in any way at all. Not even been called in for questioning. I wonder whether they feel they're almost immune, and whether that means this stuff is still going on in the same scale that it was before.
I think you're sadly right. I think it is going on. I think we only will know the scale of it and stop it if we have this national inquiry.
To find out the truth.
Exactly, and that's so important. But also there's a culture, clearly a culture of cover-ups and lies. We need to say that culture is ended. We're going to look at everybody, whether you committed the crime itself, or if you covered up, or even if you turned a blind eye when you were, let's say, a councillor or a police person or somebody in the council, that we will come after you as well to look at you and stop that happening. Because everybody is responsible, not just the people who committed the horrific crimes, but the people who turned a blind eye.
I agree. Krish, I wonder why we've been behaving like this. Is it that we're fearful if we point the finger, and we know there's been a particular problem amongst a group of men from Pakistan, interestingly, who come from certain parts of Pakistan, because this is a problem there too. That point is worth making. Have we not really followed this more rigorously because we're sort of afraid of being called racist or Islamophobic?
I think that might be part of it. I think, look, we've overlooked children who are vulnerable for a very long time. This is not a political question for me. I'm a foster parent. My wife and I have been fostering for 18 years.
Have you?
Many of the children we've looked after have been survivors of abuse and rape. Sadly, you're more likely to be abused by someone that you know. You're more likely to be abused by a family member or a friend. And I think whatever your race, whatever your ethnicity, whatever your religion, if you've committed a crime against a child, you need to be punished to the maximum extent of the law. My worry about this is we've politicised the gang rape of children. Why are we talking about this now? We're talking about it now because a friend of yours who I admire in many aspects tweeted about this just before New Year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did really get... I mean,
it's important that he's racist.
To be fair, Charlie Peters of GBNews did do a huge amount of work. But you're right, Elon did it.
He's put us on the radar.
He did.
And, you know, the J report came out in 2014 and had all sorts of recommendations. The Conservative government at the time had 10 years in power to do something about this and did nothing. I know this is a political debate show, but I tend to be non-political on this subject.
Actually, on this subject...
Yeah.
I'm endeavouring not to be too party political.
I think that's important because we've got to put the children first in the middle of this. To be fair to the Labour Party, their new Children's Wellbeing Act is putting into play some of the recommendations from the J report, and they've been in office, 6-7 months? So they've done more in their time in office than the Conservatives did in 10 years.
OK, I take that point. I mean, Alex, you know... We know it's Labour councils where this happened geographically. We know that Labour councillors knew and just chose not to act. But the corresponding claim that in 14 years... I mean, Kemi Badenoch is the leader of the Conservative Party. She was Women's Minister from 2022 to 2024. She's been a Member of Parliament since 2017. She's never... Yeah, Women and Children's Minister.
Yeah.
And she's never mentioned this once.
Well, in Rotherham, after the J report, the commissioner brought in, took over the council because the council was not fit for purpose. That was under the Conservatives who initiated it. They initiated the reports to look into it. And then more recently, the IISAC, we launched a task force, 550 perpetrators arrested in 1 year. But clearly, we need to go further. And one of the things that's important, I think, we're only now starting to realise is the sheer scale across the country. I think when Rotherham was the first example of what happened, the first public example.
So you're saying that actually it's not until the last few months we've really learnt the scale of all of this?
I think every day, frankly,
but unusual,
it gets worse and worse.
But unusual to be Women's and Children's Minister for that 2-year period, never to mention this once.
Well, all I can say, I've worked with Kemi numerous times. I raised it first in Parliament, I think in 2020, 2021. I did a private member's bill, a 10-minute rule bill, actually on this issue.
Your record on this is why you're sitting here this evening. You have tried ever so hard on this. I'm just saying that your party could have done more.
I think it's clear that we need to go further. Frankly, I don't think any party could ever say we have done enough until it stops happening. We all need to work together. Yeah. But I think the spotlight now is focusing on it, and I think we need to realise how all the different areas that have been effective interplay. And we're talking up to 50. God forbid, it could be even worse. And the only way I think we realise you can't do a peaceful, or shouldn't rather do a piecemeal strategy dealing with one town here, one town there. You need to look, what is happening to our country? What is going on? Because this is a national scale problem. We're talking about thousands, tens of thousands of perpetrators, hundreds of thousands of girls. This is a monumental catastrophe for Britain. And the only way we can now deal with it to redress what's happened, but once again, stop future incidents happen. And that, I think, isn't being talked about enough. It's a national...
In conclusion, the announcements today from the Home Secretary?
Too little, too late, won't achieve anything.
Jane?
Not enough, nearly not enough. Only now, with thanks to Charlie Peters and some fantastic journalism, bringing together, beginning to put the jigsaw puzzle together of what happened from the local inquiries, from research. I think all of us who read the sentencing remarks that were widely kind of tweeted...
Quite hard to read.
I feel ashamed I didn't know that was the sort of level. It was excruciating to read. Those girls, what they endured, for Labour not to go full on, to shine a light on every single person involved in this is shocking. And it's clearly what British people, we need to get to the bottom of it to prevent it happening again. And I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to the journalists who are making this top of the news, because it should rightly be there.
Final thought on this, Krish. Are Labour getting this wrong?
I think everyone's been getting this wrong for a long time, and we've got to put the party politics aside and put the victims...
But Labour are in government. It's up to them to make this decision.
I want to say that Labour have done more in the time they've got than the Conservatives did before.
Do you back the calls for a full national inquiry with statutory powers?
I would like to see that happen.
OK, thank you. We are agreed on that.